They found soybean. So, we've talked PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X rumors, but now let's take a look at the Switch and the possibility of a brand new model in 2020. And of course, the long-time thing that a lot of people have been hoping for is that 2020 is the year that we see some kind of Switch Pro. And the rumor that's going around yesterday, by the time this video is live, I hope, isn't necessarily confirming that. It's saying that sometime by the end of this current quarter, quarter one, we are going to be seeing a manufacturing production of a new Switch model to come out later this year. Now, this rumor is currently circulating across a number of different websites. The actual original source is a Taiwanese website called DigiTimes, and specifically what it's talking about is that there's a timetable coming up where these new Switches are going to go into production, and they'll be coming out later this year, probably near the end of quarter two, so maybe June, early summer, that kind of thing. And it doesn't necessarily focus on the idea of it being a Switch Pro, but it does mention two specific things that are interesting. Now, the first thing is that it's going to have an improved CPU, which is something that's been talked about a lot in the past for the Switch. A lot of people were wondering if the revised Switch that came out last year was going to feature that, and it didn't. It was a lightly upgraded one, but not something noticeably different. So there's been ongoing talks that we might be seeing a more powerful CPU, which has been one of the main rumors for a Switch Pro in the future. The other thing it talks about, though, that I don't think anyone's really heavily speculated on before, is the idea that this new Switch model would be designed using a magnesium alloy as what it's made out of instead of the traditional plastic. Now, my immediate reaction just hearing this is that it's really interesting to think about a more durable metal body Switch, because one of the biggest complaints I've had with the original Switch, especially the launch one, has been the issues of how frail the plastic is. It doesn't do a great job of absorbing impact. If you ever drop the system, it's just not gonna look great. The kickstand obviously is a problem, and really the plastic itself doesn't even hold that well against the heat the system produces. Original launch Switches, if you leave them in the dock really often, there are all kinds of reported issues, like systems slightly bending, causing cracks in the system parts near where the screws are, and even having the heating vents completely break off, which is exactly what happened to my Switch. Sure, the system still runs fine, but it's really disheartening to have your favorite main system fall apart even when you try your best to take care of it. So the idea of having a different material that it's constructed out of that would absolutely be a much more durable design is really interesting. Now, the downside to switching over to a metal like this is obviously the fact that production costs would go up compared to the plastic, so that would also result in a more expensive system. And this is where the question comes up a little bit of whether or not this new model is the Switch Pro that people want, or if it's something entirely different. Is it possible that instead of getting a technical Switch Pro, this is a new additional sideline model that offers some interesting differences and maybe a performance bump, but not necessarily the kind of thing that people were talking about with getting some kind of true 4K system? Now, one possibility is that this is the Switch Pro, where it is something that has that kind of 4K capability for video. It's going to be made out of metal instead of plastic. It's just one more thing to add on in terms of all the features and functions people want out of a higher quality premium Nintendo system. I think another possibility, though, at least going off of what's stated in this article alone, is that maybe we're not seeing necessarily a Switch Pro, but instead just a new model that offers something that's a little more premium. The trade-off being that you would have this slightly more powerful and much better feeling system, but at a higher price point than regular Switches currently go for, where you're spending, instead of $300, maybe something closer to $400, but not necessarily going to the same height that a 4K version would do. The other big question I have for this is whether or not this is the Switch Pro or just some kind of special metal Switch. Where do the Joy-Cons come into this equation? Because is it a situation where it is like a regular Switch and it just comes with its own metal Joy-Cons? Are you expected to use the regular plastic Joy-Cons with it, which I think would have this really weird kind of contradictory feel? Or is this some kind of weird cross-design of a regular Switch and a Switch Lite, where it's a full-sized Switch that can dock, it can still do all the things a regular Switch can do, but it does have permanently attached Joy-Cons to the side that just act as part of the controls, and it gives you that kind of unibody design that the Switch Lite has, which honestly, I'm a really big fan of. I know there's this kind of cool concept feature of being able to take off a Joy-Con and hand it to a friend, and that's a neat thing for local multiplayer, but honestly, ever since using the Switch Lite, not having that unibody design makes the regular Switch feel really awkward to me. So if there's a possibility that we can get a regular full-size Switch that has all the regular benefits of a normal Switch, but features that more durable unibody design of a Switch Lite that I also find to be a lot more comfortable, and again, it would have that metal design instead, that is really tempting to me. Now, of course, the other thing that was talked about that we mentioned earlier is that along with the metal design, it would also have a different CPU. And if it's not a Switch Pro, I think something else that's worth considering is that this could be another kind of half step up situation, kind of like the 3DS to the new 3DS, where this isn't a more powerful system that's hitting all new resolutions, but instead is something that just has that kind of push and power to make sure that certain games are running a lot smoother and better than they were before. Whether that's ensuring that they do hit 1080p on TV and 720 in handheld, because some games still aren't always doing that, ensuring that they have more stable frame rates, and hopefully doesn't actually continue the new 3DS side of having some games that require the new version, because that's just awful. But the point is, it may not necessarily be a Switch Pro, it might just be a Switch Small Plus, Minor Plus, Pro Lite, whatever. The point is, we might be seeing some kind of cool new side version of a Switch, but not necessarily a true Switch Pro. Now, of course, with any kind of article like this, you have to take it all with a grain of salt. It's possible that this is something that is real and is happening, but it's also possible that it's based on zero facts whatsoever. A lot of people are really interested about what it's saying, and I think there's a lot of buzz and hype around what it could mean for a new model Switch. Just the fact that there is another model on the way after we got the Switch redesign and Switch Lite last year is really interesting to see that Nintendo is going to have that kind of constant pattern where just a year later we're seeing something new. Now, Nintendo has made a comment about the article, but it's not one that's completely condemning it. It's really more of the kind of non-committal non-answer, where it's just saying we have no announcements to make at this time. So it's going to be really interesting to see whether or not this proves to be true, and if it is, what exactly this new model is going to really be.